Hello, Garland Nixon here with Margaret Kimberly. She's the executive editor and senior columnist at Black Agenda Report. We got plenty to talk about. Let's talk. Hello, Margaret Kimberly. There we go. I'm having a struggle here with Rockfin. That's weird. Having trouble streaming everywhere today, but that's okay. Wait a minute. I think we're on YouTube. That's why a lot of people will say, "Oh God, I hate that. Countdown of yours."
No.
And the reason I have to do it is because I stream on Rumble and Rockfin and all this other stuff, and it gives me a second to get that together. And in this instance, not get it together. So apparently we're not on Rumble either. That's okay. We'll kill Rumble since it's not working anyway. All right, we're going to do the best we can, Margaret. All right, let's roll. Well, at least we're on YouTube and Rockfin, though not on Rumble. We're ready to roll. The last days of the Biden regime, and I'm using the term regime now. You know, the U.S. always uses that term regime for any country that they don't like. That's maybe, I don't know. Generally, here's what it means. The leader of the country has a high, percentage, a large percentage. The majority of the people like their leader, and he doesn't want to give up their natural resources. That means he's evil. Okay, let's get rolling. Let's start here, Margaret. I want to get your thoughts on this. So the Democrats lose the election. They get pulverized. And amongst the, ruling elite and there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. There's sexism. They're all talking about why. But here's what's interesting. The Biden administration isn't. The Biden regime, him and his inner circle and his team could give a crap less. In fact, they're doing the very things to make the Democratic Party even more unpopular. And I'll finish this up. And the people who are discussing it talk about everything, whether it's how they ran the campaign, who ran the campaign. What they're not saying is the way we governed for the last 4 years caused us to lose. And the last 2 months while the there's weeping of gnashing of teeth among the pundit class, the people who governed are doubling, tripling, and quadrupling down on the type of governing that got them destroyed. Margaret Kimberly.
Well, that tells you what their agenda really is, how important, or rather, how unimportant the people are, how unimportant what we want is. They have an agenda. Their agenda broadly is to serve the interests of the ruling class. So that means you don't do anything about inflation because inflation is caused by price gouging. So you don't do anything about that. Weapons manufacturers, what do they want? Well, they want more war. So you make sure you support Israel to the hilt and commit themselves to continuing this genocide, to continuing the war in Ukraine, to overthrowing the government in Syria, to make sure that's another source of warfare and weapons purchases. So, and austerity, meaning just making sure that the people live in a precarious situation, that people were kicked off of Medicaid, kicked off of SNAP benefits after the COVID era programs ended, which I think is a big reason that millions of people who voted for Biden wouldn't vote for Kamala Harris, to your point about policy. So they're doubling down on all these things because they don't have to pretend anymore. The elections, during an election, they'll go through the motions. They'll pretend there's some concern for the people when there isn't. But they don't have to do that anymore. So they're answering to their real bosses. the ruling class, corporate interests. So no, they don't care.
I certainly agree. What are your thoughts about the self-serving discussion? Why we lost? You know what I mean? It's you know what it reminds me of. That when like if somebody goes, you've seen this, on TV or whatever we all have, where someone goes to an interview and the boss says, "Well, just give me one of your a bad thing about you," and the person says, "I'm too caring. I work too hard and I'm just too dedicated." You're like, don't hand me this self-serving crap. You're supposed to say something like, I can be a little confused when things get complicated, right? But the Democrat, it's like, why'd you lose? Because people are sexist and racist and homophobic and anti blah, blah, blah. All these things that why'd you lose? Because we are so dedicated to moral niceness and goodness, and our country is just full of bad people. That's why we lost. Yeah, there's like no real discussion of why they lost, other than because we're the good guys. That's why we lost, Margaret.
Well, of course, because to say otherwise would be to admit what we were just talking about. So, and the Democratic, and I blame Democrats, the rank and file too, for falling for this, for the virtue signaling. We're good. Those people are ignorant. The MAGA hat wearers are ignorant, and they don't like abortion and whatever and whatever. And we're the good, enlightened people. So they couldn't get away with this if Democrats acted the way members of a political party are supposed to act and actually made demands. Democrats should have reacted with anger. They should have, grabbed pitchforks and marched on the DNC. But instead, all we get is, because if there was any analysis of the election, then they would have to look at themselves. And I'm not one who says we get what we deserve. We do not deserve the system we live under, but you have to take some responsibility for the way you react, if nothing else, to politics. And it infuriates me. I'm not even a Democrat anymore. I was most of my life. But that people can be hoodwinked like this and not say anything. And, especially if it's Trump. And if Trump didn't exist, the Democratic establishment would have had to invent him. Because if you ask a question, if you have a demand, it's, well, Trump, but he's Hitler, but he's a fascist. And so you have millions of people who are completely unprepared to behave the way they should behave as political actors. We're all political actors, or we can be. But if you fall back on this, my party is the good people's party, then you get nothing. You get nothing. You get bad candidates. You get people who thought they could, drag Kamala Harris across the finish line, even though many people don't like her. So that's how first of all, they have to explain away having $1 billion and still losing. Having buy-in from the corporate media, from the political establishment, but you couldn't fool people and get them to go to a voting booth and vote for her. So they're making excuses. But Democrats, I say to the people, especially to Black people, stop making excuses for them. They're supposed to deliver for you, which, first of all, they can't do if they lose. And secondly, when they get in, if they don't have your demands behind them, they take the path of least resistance, which is to answer to the people we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's a fact, Margaret. Now, let me ask you this. I want to ask you something. 2 words, Bernie Sanders. Bernie comes out now and he's doing the usual Bernie shtick, right? He says, we gotta support Joe Biden or Kamala Harris because he gives you because Trump is so bad, blah, blah, blah. And people say, but Bernie, you're supposed to your shtick is you're standing up for the working class. And during 2016, you said all the right things, right? And people were like, yeah, well, what Bernie's saying makes sense. And I remember Bernie went to Trump country, this place in West Virginia, and he talked to these Trump supporting people They gave him a standing ovation because he said all the right things about the worker. You're getting screwed. You're getting mistreated. Somebody, and people are like, yeah. And then Bernie does this. But we got to support fill in the blank, Biden, Hillary, or whatever. Go ahead with that. And then I got another question. But your thoughts on that whole Bernie crap?
Bernie, I mean, you're right. It is Bernie crap. At this point, it's lame. When Biden was in, it was, we've got to support Biden. He's the most, what was that line? Most progressive since FDR. So then he wants to talk big when the Democrats are out. And it's tired. It's lame. And, nobody's falling for that anymore. If you're going to tell us when the Democrats is in, that we have to follow them, then don't, pretend once it's over. Just don't say anything. He offers, when he ran both times, he gave in to the establishment. Instead of continuing his campaign, he allowed Hillary Clinton to blame him for her loss in 2016. I mean, it was over for him months before November. She lost. It was all on her. So it's enough, Bernie, enough from Bernie and these other so-called progressives. Now they want to talk about Medicare for all. They didn't talk about it when they had the opportunity to push their party to have some kind of single payer health plan. So enough from Bernie, enough from all of them.
Yeah. The thing about it is Bernie's out now. And again, people look at Bernie and say, well, Bernie's telling the truth. Well, okay, because Bernie's out there now talking about we need to do this for the working class and that or what have you, right? You know what? I can look at a pig and say that the way to success is if that pig starts flying around. It ain't the nature of pigs to fly, so that's not going to happen. What Bernie talks about, all the things that the Democratic Party should do, which is true, which oftentimes is true, right? But he won't address the fundamental problems, and that is, if that's a pig, it ain't got wings. The Democratic Party should do things that, based on the structure of the party, the inclinations of the party, the ideological alignment of the ruling elite that controls the party, it will never do. So it's just like they should do this, and this. But nobody says, Bernie, based on the party now, will they do it? Well, certainly not. Shouldn't you talk about a change or a restructure or something that could cause? Nope. It's just prattle. And ultimately, here's what we know. In 2028, when they run Liz Cheney and John Bolton, Bernie's going to say, we have to do that because J.D. Vance. I mean, that's the direction they're going now.
Yes, of course. It will always be that. And the end result, at the end of the day, it's always shut up and go along. I mean, that's basically what he's saying. You can't demand anything else. You can't expect anything else. So what's the point? So Bernie should just retire. Isn't he 80 years old? He should just retire and write a book or something and stop this pretense of being some kind of leftist hero. He's a reformer, a liberal reformer, but the Democratic Party has made it clear they're not having it. They don't even want a little bit of Bernieism, not even a possibility. They don't want it to be discussed. So if Bernie's going to say anything, he should talk about that. He should talk about the Democratic Party oligarchy and how they make demands. You're not raising the minimum wage. You're not bringing back any of the COVID programs. I mean, that was an electoral winner. I have said if there was still a child tax credit, Kamala Harris would have won. But that's not their goal to necessarily win. It's to win with the smoke and the mirrors, to win by fooling people, to win by pointing at Trump or whoever the Republican is and calling them evil incarnate. That's how they want to win. And even though they can win, I mean, Democrats should always win a presidential election. I mean, when you think about the demographics of the country and the population centers, and Democrats should always win. It shouldn't, maybe Senate or House, but they usually win the popular vote. Trump this time even won the popular vote. So, but they don't want to win like that. And Bernie is a what's the word I'm looking for? Bernie is a company guy at the end of the day, and he's not going to buck the system. So all of the things he talks about are meaningless because he does not want to buck the system.
The other thing is this. Sometimes I say this: Bernie's worse than nothing. You know, I feel at times that the machine can't work without a Bernie and an AOC. He's the worst part of the machine because
True.
Bernie gives them legitimacy amongst people who may be anti-war or maybe, you know, anti-corporate, and they've got to have something that gives them some hope that there could be change within the party. And Bernie and AOC, God knows there's another one, their job is to give them hope, is to say, look, somewhere in the party, there's someone who is it just takes the name Democrat Socialist or something like that, whatever, right? And then every now and then wears a dress that says tax the rich or something, or, you know, Bernie wears some mittens or something and looks like a regular guy and then says, you know, we got to stand up against the corporations and give people health care. Their job is to do that. And every now and then, the people in charge pet them. They pet their pets. They rub their ears and they give them a treat and say, good doggy, you know, and you keep us going. Because now, once people lose hope, the party's done and people have lost hope. But they were there to provide a smidgen of hope. Just maybe they'll listen to Bernie. And you know what they did last time they got crushed? They lost to Trump. They said, we're going to bring Bernie in the Senate and he's going to be, what was it? He was in charge? Outreach. Nothing to do with policy. Nothing to do with what should we do? It's outreach. In other words, a lot of people like Bernie. Bernie, we need you to sheepdog them. That was the outreach. Absolutely. Instead of outreach, they should have called him the sheepdogger official sheepdogger of the Senate. Margaret.
Well, my late colleague, Bruce Dixon at Black Agenda Report, he's one of the first people to coin that phrase, sheepdog. He said it in 2015. He said all that's going to happen in 2016 is that Bernie Sanders will end up rounding up the sheep, meaning Democrats, and delivering them straight to Hillary Clinton in 2016. And he was absolutely right. I think Bernie surprised himself in 2016. You know, even though Hillary Clinton did beat him, I don't think he expected to do as well as he did. But he definitely lit the match, and more progressive Democrats, or just Democrats who actually want to see their party stand for something on their behalf, were sat up and took notice that maybe there was a possibility that the Democratic Party didn't have to be represented by the likes of Hillary Clinton. Remember when she was talking about health care and she said, it will never, ever, ever come to pass, you know. She was a horrible politician, but at any rate, that there was this hope that was not it. That's not all there was in the Democratic Party, and that the people might get a little something, but they don't want that. The ruling class definitely does not want that. It isn't going to happen, and Democrats have to decide, especially Black people, need a new relationship with the Democrats instead of acting like victims. All we can do is vote for Democrats. We have no other role to play. We can't even play a role of making the decision. We can't even play a role in asking questions. And then, of course, when things go south, when in this case Kamala Harris loses, then all you have left is anger at people for not voting for her. You know, mad at people saying, I hope you get deported, or mad at Palestinians because they, Arab and Muslim communities who would not vote for the party that was killing their people. But all you have left is being mad at them for not being a chump like you are. So that's my message to people who still think they have a place in the Democratic Party. If you're not going to change that relationship, if you're not going to be ready to make demands, to ask questions, then just give up. And if they, you know, even if it's Trump, just forget about it, because you could play a role to perhaps have something different. And if you don't think so, if you're so cowed and you think all you can do is defend whoever the Democrats serve up to you, well, then you're not going to get anything out of it. Not even a victory.
Yeah, one of the interesting dynamics here of this last term, and that is Joe Biden said, well, the reason that a guy with a checkered past, shall we say, when it comes to issues of discrimination, and that's being charitable, right? Joe Biden said, yes, the reason that I ran was Charlottesville. These Nazis are marching around saying blah, 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 right? And I think a lot of people who understand the dynamics of Ukraine are seeing some really serious, and I guess this gets into this, some very serious contradictions when it comes to the Democratic Party. We are for race. We're for all of these groups. We're opposed to fascists because Trump's a fascist. We're opposed to the Nazis. And people look at it and they're like, you got people who are like goose stepping around with the iconography of the Third Reich lit all over their bodies and painting these things on their tanks and all this crap. And you're sending them weapons and stuff. And you're like, we're standing up against white supremacy and against Nazis. And we ran because Nazis. And we're seeing this contradiction where you're like, well, apparently, I guess they aren't Nazis, because if they were, you'd send them money and weapons. But at any rate, your thoughts on that contradiction and other contradictions that have borne themselves out so openly with the Biden administration?
Well, this idea that, Trump is exceptionally racist. He doesn't have the niceties, although Joe Biden doesn't have them either. I mean, if you look back at his own comments, when he was in the Senate, he was responsible for passing that Clinton crime bill, which put so many Black people in prison, which incentivized, even though it was a federal bill, it incentivized states to fill their prisons. And he talked about, well, actually before that, he was the point person on fighting busing for school desegregation. And I remember him saying something about a racial jungle. There's going to be a racial jungle. I don't want my racial jungle. I mean, most people would think that's something Trump would say, but that's something Biden said. During the crime bill, what did he say? We have everything but the death penalty for jaywalking. And he bragged about, if you have just a little bit of crack cocaine, you're going to do 5 years. Well, that all depends, right?
Unless you're a Biden, unless your last name's Biden, then
yes,
you're going to do 5 seconds.
And these predators who are not redeemable, meaning Black people. The corn pop story. Who would tell that story? I mean, it was just bizarre. And about 4 years ago, around this time, December of 2020, shortly after he won, he had a meeting with Black so-called leaders in which he was insulting, he was belittling, he was screaming at them. And someone leaked it to the press, and thank God for whomever that person is. But that's the real Joe Biden. He's an old racist. He's not less racist than
anybody. Well, certainly not. He's not less racist than the Nazis in Ukraine, because he's aligned with them.
And speaking of the Nazis in Ukraine, they've tried to pretty them up, but Ukraine is this divided nation, and a big chunk of the country. It's a long story, but they did not want to be part of the Soviet Union. When the Germans invaded during World War II, half the country sided with them. So I remember when the war first began and they had to airbrush all these photos because the soldiers had all these Nazi insignia and patches and they had to try to explain it all away. But Ukraine is now the 51st state. The US government completely supports the Ukrainian government. They don't do anything without everything a government does, from hospitals to police to schools. Everything is with our money, and all to try to weaken Russia, as Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said, which isn't going to happen. But yes, and that was supposed to be the not fascist party as openly supporting open fascists. And that's what we're dealing with when this party that loves to virtue signal and claim that it's the good enlightened one.
Yeah, the other thing is this, to me, the Biden people, this was kind of, and I'm not saying it's like it's a bad thing, the death of the Democratic Party. I don't know how they get back. When you expose who you are, I don't know how many instances that I saw where the Democratic Party they bring some Azov guys to Capitol Hill and march them around Congress. They had some Azov Nazi at Disneyland. There's Jon Stewart pinning a medal on him, right? And so the other thing I recall, and I do a show in Pacifica in DC, so I'm very, very, very much, I really like to listen. I've always said, I consider myself an informal political analyst, right? But a big part of it is, to me, just like back in the day, they used to say, when you buy stocks, look around. If you see Coca-Cola signs all over the place, buy Coca-Cola stocks. If you see Campbell, you know what I mean? Whatever you see around, buy the stocks. That used to be, before computers, the way people bought stocks very successfully, right? Okay. And to me, when I listen to people talking around and listen to callers, I kind of get the trends from like anecdotes, right? And when I listen to people say, I'm angry because why are they sending all of this money over to so-and-so, and I'm struggling here, I understand people are not supporting this foreign policy.
No.
And now look what's happening. They just keep doubling down, and they see the contradiction between the Democrats saying, I'm here for you and I'm here to help you. And they're all, you might remember this, they voted like $60 billion for Ukraine. And they were all dancing and flying Ukrainian flags and all this. And I had callers angry, particularly at the Black Caucus, saying the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, whatever, right? And here, their neighborhoods are deteriorating, and their people are saying, hey, man, you got to do something for us. And there was nobody in the back of the room sticking their hand up saying, hey, what about $60 billion for my community? Nope, they're celebrating $60 billion for old Adolf over there and nothing for us. And people got that, and they understand that contradiction, Margaret.
Oh, absolutely. And, the Black Caucus members, I remember when Zelensky spoke in Congress, and I think it was Barbara Lee was one of them, who was supposed to be this, anti-war person wearing yellow and blue. She and another member, it was disgusting. I mean, it wasn't as bad as the Canadian Parliament, who actually had an actual Nazi appear before their parliament. But but that's part of the system that I was talking about. The ruling class, their interest is in keeping the people down, keeping the people in a state of precarity, a race to the bottom. No, you can't find a house you can afford. Yes, you have to take whatever low-wage job you can get, and you're going to shut up about it. So they don't want to hear about any complaints about money going to Ukraine or to Israel. Or any other country that shouldn't be getting our public money. That's not on their agenda. Helping the people here is not on their agenda. It just isn't. Fooling people into thinking they're better is on the agenda, so that wing of the ruling class, that wing of the duopoly, can win elections. But you see what they're made of when they lose. They're just like, oh well, and it's just finger pointing, as you were saying, finger pointing about BS, that she only lost because of misogyny, and this trope that a woman can't win. We don't know that a woman can't win. We know that you can't have Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris, who can barely. And let's talk about her for just a second.
Yes.
As a person. I've always been so unimpressed with her. She can barely I've never seen a politician who could not talk off the cuff. I mean, she comes, the word salads, the hesitancy, the lack of, she's not sure of herself. I mean, she can pull it together. She did well in the one debate against Trump. But overall, she's a careerist, an ambitious careerist with friends who promoted her and given her money, but there's no substance there, and it shows. It absolutely shows. So, but they thought they could, put lipstick on the pig, and get her over the finish line. And it was always. Do you remember when she went on Oprah and she's bragging about being a gun owner, and it just came off as being crazy? If somebody breaks into my house, they're gonna get shot. This mythical, this belief that if you said you were pro-gun, some white guys in Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania would vote Democrat instead of Republican, and you try to use her to trot out this tired old trope that never had any validity in the first place, or this hope of never Trump Republicans who don't exist. They're like unicorns. They are mythical creatures. Republicans like Trump, okay? But I'm sorry, I went off on a bit of a tangent there with your last question.
No, yeah, good to go. Well, let's put it like this. I mean, people got mad and called in and complained to WPFW because before the election, I said, to me, she comes across as an idiot. And people literally called and complained, oh, you can't say that. I'm like, hey, I got to call him like I see him. And I said this. I watched her, and, since this is what I do, I watched all of her speeches, and I said, I never saw her answer one question ever. The whole time I looked, and I'm like, when I see a question and they'd be like, well, what are you going to do about, no, let me say this. When they asked her what she was going to do different than Joe Biden, she says, I can't think of anything. So I got to give her credit. That's the one answer. And I don't think that's the one that saved her. I'll put it like this. But other than that, it was, so what are you going to do about the border? Donald Trump is doing terrible things at the border. Well, what are you going to do about foreign policy? Donald Trump is going to have a worse foreign policy than us. I watched the Fox News. Every question they asked her, she said Donald Trump. If she didn't say Donald Trump, she says the significance of Americans' aspirations and dreams. And she talked for 5 minutes, and I'd be like, what the hell did she just say? I mean, she came across as someone who, I gotta be honest, she sounded really stupid.
Yeah, I agree with you. And she, and it's, I remember when, I guess it was Stephen Colbert, it was a friendly interview too. How are you going to be different? How are you different from Joe Biden? It seems to me that's a question that she, her team would have prepped her for. But I don't know if she freezes in the moment. I don't understand what it is. But just off the top of my head, I would think you'd say, I'm proud to have served with Joe Biden. But as he said himself, he was a transitional figure. And I'm going to take the party in build on our work and continue the good things we did, such as the infrastructure bill, and get Build Back Better, or something like that. Get that passed so we can help people. That's how I'm like Joe Biden, proud to have served with him, but ready to do more. She can't even say that. She's a hollow woman. There's nothing there, and the fact that they thought they could pass her off as presidential material is just kind of funny to me. Now, there's several versions of the story, and one, they were working on an open primary or but it was very late at that point, an open convention, some means of giving the appearance of a choice. And Biden just endorsed her and undercut the whole thing because he was angry about being kicked out. I don't know if that's true. Then there's a version that says no, there was this top-down decision to pick her. I'm not sure which one is true, but actually, I'm surprised they didn't get rid of Biden sooner. I figured in 2023 he would announce he wasn't going to run again. It was time for somebody else. Blah blah blah. But he didn't want to go, and apparently there was nobody who wanted to tell him that, despite his anemic approval ratings. This is before the debate disaster. But it just shows you, the inertia in the Democratic Party to stick with the establishment and to be opposed to any real change for the people.
Let me get your comment on something else, and that is, sometimes you see people keep making very, very bad moves and doing boneheaded things. And at some point, you come to the conclusion that the people that are making the decisions are idiots, right? Okay. Here's a party that puts Joe Biden forward, right? And we're like, and all of the people, Jimmy Dore was doing like videos about him, and he'd show, like, I remember watching one, and he's stumbling and he's stuttering and he doesn't know where he is, and he's wandering aimlessly around a stage trying to find his way up. I'm looking at this guy, I'm like, he needs a service dog to get off the stage after his whatever he said, which was confusing enough. And so it's like, you can't run this guy. Before the infamous debate, a lot of us were saying, you're going to send this guy out to a debate? Okay. Then, and we're like, so they put this guy forward. Then we see Kamala Harris, and, we listen to her, and those of us who've been paying attention to her and said, you're going to put her out for it? We knew the director. We're like, who back there thinks they can win with these people? And then, and let me throw this at you. They did this advertisement, and it was supposed to appeal to men. Did you see that advertisement? And there were these guys, and they were like, I'm a man, and I'm okay with a woman being president. And I'm like, notwithstanding that these guys, if you're appealing to men, are kind of effeminate, okay, fair enough. But just you put like a camouflage hat on a guy, and they're kind of effeminate, and they're like, I'm a guy, and I eat carburetors for, the guy literally said this, I eat carburetors for dinner. And I'm like, guys don't say that kind of stuff. Somebody who's writing like this, who's like, oh, what do we need to say to appeal to men? I got it. Some person who graduated from some vine-covered Ivy League school, who knows nothing about a regular old guy who drives a pickup truck and just, works like my dad, a longshoreman who wears a hard hat. You know what I mean? They know nothing about these guys. Anyway, I eat carburetors. And I watched this video, and I'm like, who in the hell thought that was going to appeal? So my point is, when you look at the people they put forward and the absurd moves, you think the people that are running this party are so out of touch that stupid doesn't describe. Anyway, Margaret, you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I do. It's, you're right. Out of touch, elitists who obviously don't care to even find out what appeals to people, what people want to talk about, instead of having, I did not see that particular ad.
Oh my God.
Being in New York, being in a blue state, we didn't see many ads. So, but to use real people maybe, but they didn't have anything to sell because they would be lying. Biden lied about so many things when he ran in 2020 about raising the minimum wage. Then they get in with Democratic control, allegedly, and then it's, well, the parliamentarian won't let us. I never heard so much about a parliamentarian in my life.
Sinema and what's his Manchin? They were the designated Republican stoppers were Manchin and Sinema, and the parliamentarian who they appointed. The person that they appointed as parliamentarian, was now in charge of them.
I know. So, everything they said they were going to do, basically they lied about it. So then they were stuck in this election because they didn't have a record to run on. All they could say was, well, prices came down at some. Do you remember after Ukraine, they were talking about Putin's price hike?
Yes.
Because of their dumb thinking that they could sanction Russia's oil, and oil prices went up around the world. And they said, well, this is all Putin's price hike. Thankfully, that didn't last very long. So it was Biden's price hike then, right? But this unwillingness to, a decision actually, not to do anything to help the people, because the people in control of the Democratic Party don't want to do that. So then you're stuck trying to say prices, or the thing that I found funny was if there was some indicator, that economic indicator that had nothing to do with your life, that
You're
didn't
right.
help you at all. Well, the indicators are good. We don't know why people claim they're struggling. I'm like, because they're struggling. And it was elitist. It was horrible. Just, people don't really have anything to complain about because the XYZ indicator says they're doing well. Well, if people say they're not doing well, they're not. And to treat millions of working people as though they were making something up or they were too stupid to know they were doing well, that was a recipe for a political defeat. And that's just what they got.
Well, and it was always like this. People were like, hey, we're struggling. They're like, you only think you're struggling. Go to this website, and we've got charts and graphs and pie charts and all these things. Once you read those, you'll know you're doing fine. Ignore your empty bank account, your maxed out credit cards, and that guy standing outside of your house with a sheriff that's about to throw you out so you'll be living in your car. Ignore that stuff. We got a website that shows you the truth. Let me ask you this. Let me throw something at you. I was in Baltimore. So, I'm a lot big with anecdotes for politics. That's everything I go by. So I'm in Baltimore City before the election. And I see a black guy, look like a working class guy in a car. He's got a Trump sticker on it. And I looked, and I've been around this area my whole life. And when I said, Kamala's going to lose bad. You know what I mean? I saw a black dude with a Trump sticker. I'm like, Kamala is going to lose bad when I saw that. And it wasn't just that he had it. It's like he's in Baltimore City where, you would think, oh, it's a city of Democrats and he'd be condemned. Ain't nobody like, boo, a Trump sticker. They're like, yeah, a lot of quiet as is kept. A whole lot of brothers told me they were voting for Trump, right? And it wasn't that they love Trump or did they like Trump. It was, this is what I heard. Well, when Trump was in, at least prices weren't that bad. So maybe they'll get back. And they were like very realistic people saying they probably won't, but who knows? But at least we'll give this a shot because the Democrats have been so bad, right? And what I thought was this. Okay, whatever. They can vote for whoever they want. I believe vote for, I would certainly push them further to the left, no doubt, way further to the left. But what I thought was this. They're getting clear. They're escaping this mentality that says the Democrats are my salvation. Now, if they try Trump or whoever and they're like, okay, that didn't work, at least now you can talk to them and say the Democratic Party's not your friend. Maybe a new party, vote green, whatever, vote independent, anything, but it's no longer this thought process of I'm going to be dragged around. I got to vote for the Democrats no matter what. And I felt good about that. I don't know how you feel, Margaret.
Well, I wish there was it's still black people being in the trap of the duopoly, that your only option is to stick with Democrats or Republicans and not to do something different. So that's my problem with it. But I think it was 78%. Generally 90% of black people will vote for the Democrat. But this time I think it was 78% of black men voting for Kamala Harris. So that means the Democrats lost a big chunk of black people because they didn't see a difference. Now, I don't want to vote for Trump, but I didn't want to vote for Harris either. I think you can't keep fooling people. You can't say you're going to raise the minimum wage and then you don't. You can't say that he's the most progressive president since FDR and then these programs just disappear. You can't keep doing that and expect to get support from working people. I want to talk briefly about Trump's appeal. There are people who Trump is, I think, the most divisive figure in U.S. politics. I suspect ever. I think you could make that case. So people loathe him, despise him. They'll say this: I despise Trump. He's a despicable guy. They're deplorables and so forth. But there are people, his appeal is not just racism. So people will automatically say anybody who likes Trump is a racist. That's true. I think that racists like Trump. That's absolutely true. But there's another element of his appeal. He doesn't give up. So they hit him with these charges. They find him guilty. He says, I'm running anyway. And for a lot of people, that act alone makes him attractive. The fact that he does not give up, the fact that he says you're not getting rid of me, they like that, especially in the absence of anything positive, anything that we've been talking about. The Democrats, it also shows the weakness of the Democrats, that the Democrats don't even go through the motions of doing anything that makes them appealing to people. So Trump can appeal to people just with his bravado, just by the fact that he says, I'm not going, you're not getting rid of me. Oh, you're going to raid my house? Oh, yeah, well, I'm going to run for president again.
Can I add something to that? And another part of that is the fact that the ruling elite hate him. I think there's a lot of people. I heard a woman who was 20 some years old tell me, yeah, I can't say, she was originally from Jamaica. She's a citizen now. She said, he called my country, shit, whole country, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh yeah, so you don't like Trump? She goes, nah, I'm voting for Trump. I didn't really ask her why, but I probably should have asked her, but I didn't. We were sitting on the train. We talked every day on the train because we got on at the same spot. So I didn't really, wouldn't be right for me to dig into her business. But I just got a feeling in talking to her regularly that she hated it, that it was one of these. And you've heard the old Malcolm X when they asked the field slave to run away, and he says, any place is better than here. I got a lot of vibes that was it with people, that they were like, what we got is so bad. Oh, well, anything else could be worse. And particularly, let me add this. I talked to a guy recently, because I said it because she was in her 20s, who was 30. And he was from New York. He's here now. And he said, look, I talked to a lot of my friends in New York, the younger people. And I said, what are you doing? They said, oh, I'm a lifelong Democrat. I'm not voting for him. Why? Gaza. They can't talk about the fact that the youth vote, which Trump won like unthinkable number, could never win that. The youth vote, they can't, not just Gaza, they can't talk at all about how foreign policy affected how people, Ukraine, and of course the genocide in Gaza. They can't, no matter what, it was racism, it was sexism. Even Bernie can come out and Bernie can say it was, we ignored the working class. Sure, okay, Bernie, but even Bernie can't say, yeah, that genocide in Gaza kind of ran away all the young people.
No, he can't. Well, Bernie lived on a kibbutz as a young man. Bernie is a Zionist. He wants a kinder, gentler Zionism, but Zionism is not kind and gentle. So he gets nothing for it. He tries to straddle the fence. It's like, well, I'm not against Israel, but I want them to stop killing people. But that's the nature of Zionism. So you can't have it both ways. Seeing people, entire families killed, see Israel bombing hospitals, schools, universities, bombing refugee camps. People are trying to flee and bombing people living in tents and burning them alive. This was something the Democrats could not recover from. There were millions of people who said, I can't vote for that. And we saw it on the college campuses. They crushed that movement pretty well. All you do is, fire professors and suspend or dismiss students or dox people, or harass them, or tell them you're on this list who will never get a job, or something of that nature. You can do that. You can arrest people, lest we forget the criminal justice system. So you can do those things and shut down or curtail that kind of activity. But you cannot get people to forget what they've witnessed, that Israel does nothing without the U.S. Nothing. There's nothing and Joe Biden and Antony Blinken, the worst Secretary of State of my life, they were committed to continuing the genocide, not even going through the motions. Around a few months before Election Day, they went through this exercise. Well, Israel has 90 days to show us that they're not keeping aid out. And then the 90 days were up and they're like, oh, we don't know, actually. I mean, it's that kind of thing. And you can't fool people. When this began last October, Biden ran over there and kissed Netanyahu's ring. And they bombed a hospital. And he was like, you didn't do that. We're sure it's a Hamas missile that exploded. Everybody knew that was a lie. So anybody who cares about humanity is looking askance at them. I'm glad that people refused to vote for them. They needed to be punished for what they did. Now, what will Trump do? It could be worse. I'm not sure how it could be worse. I guess it's always possible. But as bad as it was, it's hard to convince people, well, Trump will, kill everybody in Gaza, although that's Israel's goal, is ethnic cleansing, right? Excuse me. So they had nothing, they had no leg to stand on. People were horrified. And many of them would not vote for Kamala Harris because of that. They would not. But the support for Israel is bipartisan. So it's something that's not talked about. The newspapers won't talk about it. The corporate media have done a terrible job of reporting on the opposition to U.S.-Israel policy. But there are millions of people who said, I can't go along with this. And so they would not vote for Kamala Harris. I think that's the real story of this election. Is it now like 7 million people who voted for Biden who wouldn't vote for her? I mean, that tells you the story, that they couldn't, you can't fool all of the people all of the time. And this watered down, actually, she was even worse because Biden, at least when he was running, claimed he was going to raise the minimum wage.
Right, yeah.
He was going to, and then they were like, we can't lie about that again. So all we got was, being unburdened by the past, or, something
Liz
like
Cheney.
that.
We got Liz Cheney.
It was like, I'm wondering if that was just a Hail Mary, because their polls showed her losing. And they said, well, this is, in desperation, let's try to get the never Trump Republicans, of which there are like one or two. But
no, you know what? I'll say this. I think that's, if you remember, Hillary Clinton did exactly the same thing, right? That and from what I see, the people who brought Kamala into existence were the Hillary people, right? Yep. That what you really saw with Liz Cheney is this is really who they are. This is the Democratic Leadership Council people. These are the people whose ultimate goal is to turn the Democratic Party into the Republican Party of 2004, 5, and 6 of George Bush. And they were successful. That's their problem. They were able to turn the Democratic Party into that thing. And as a result, a lot of people smelled it and said, oh my God, this smells horrible. I don't want to do it. One other thing I want to ask you about too, and that is, if I go back to, as I said, when I went to Baltimore City and I saw a black guy driving around with a Trump, and it wasn't the only one, and I felt good, not pro-Trump, it's because they're getting out from under the mindset that I got to be a Democrat. And now there's a possibility in the next election that they'll look at green or they'll look at something else, right? But if Trump disappoints them, then at least they won't say, well, I got to vote Democrat. Okay. Another big part of it under that is I feel like this. The Democratic Party has put out these black misleaders, right? Congressmen, whatever, mayors, whatever, right? And their job is sheepdogging. I'm in a black city, and I'm the black mayor, and my job is to make sure all of these black voters vote Democrat. They ain't gonna do nothing for them. Their lives are gonna be a bloody hell. But I got to make sure nothing, but remember, free junior community, they didn't get nothing, some empty promises. I felt like now the ruling elite who used the black misleadership class to deliver them to black working class votes are actually probably now going to look at the black misleadership class and say, what good are you to us anymore? You're supposed to deliver us those votes, and you can't do it. Now, they may double down on them, but now they see they can't deliver anymore. I think that's a good thing. I think the black misleadership class have been somewhat disgraced. Anyway, your thoughts on all of that, Margaret?
Well, I think you're correct about that, and that's why black people, we always talk about what we need to do, right? So anyway, so I'll jump in here too. Black people need to have a wholesale rethinking of their politics. And I don't mean necessarily changing our opinions, because before Obama, we were always the leftmost members
anti-war, all that stuff. Yep.
until Obama had wars, and then it was it was okay to destroy Libya, which is something that I think was a disgrace to us as a people. But at any rate, to take stock of where we are with the Democratic Party, that we have these elected officials who are beholden to the people we've been talking about, beholden to supporting people who spend money for wars but not for you, people who just what did we get out of Biden? I mean, they made Juneteenth an official holiday, which is not. That's another story. I'm not even in favor of that, but a lot of BS. And when he finally pardons people, he pardoned these people who were absolute crooks, the Cash for Kids people, and a doctor who was watering down chemotherapy drugs. Not even the people he put in jail with his policies, just to ignore us completely, to prop up these puppets, these black puppets, and expect us to go along. It's just insulting. And we really need for people to step back. Trump notwithstanding, don't let them scare you with Trump anymore. And ask, what are we getting out of this political system? What are people doing for us? What have you done for me lately? And the answer is nothing. And, so I hope that there's an independent thinking. I hope that people think more about self-determination. And that means stepping back from where we've been. Trump is in, right? So if you think your job as a black voter is to keep Trump out, well, it's over. He's in for the next 4 years. This is a moment. This is an opportunity to think about what we can do differently and to take a hard look at these people who don't represent us and to say we need to do something new. And we need a return to black politics. And that does not mean having black politicians. It means black people thinking about their interests, like other groups do, thinking about how to get what we need to get. And, for the next 2 years, Republicans won everything. So this is actually an opportunity. This is the time to think about what we need. And how we want to be actors in the political system and not just victims who come in at election day to save the Democrats.
Exactly. Lastly, I did want to ask you that, since you're a journalist and you're involved in the media, everybody's talking about the CNN hoax where, they walk into, it's funny because, I was in law enforcement and I got interviewed by Jamal Thomas and he said, "What'd you think about it?" I said, "Well, let me give you the first part." She says, "I got to stand back and shoot the lock off." I said, "That's Hollywood." I said, "That's like, in Hollywood where I used to love Get Smart, right? Maxwell Smart. And he'd run up behind the chaos agent and he'd give him a karate chop about this hard. He'd go, and the guy would drop unconscious, right? And I understand that's what you do in Hollywood. You ain't really want to hurt anybody. Or they're going to, quote, shoot the lock off. In real life, you can't shoot a lock off. A bullet is made of lead, generally in the lock is case hardened steel. But even if you have a metal thing, locks are made even if you put a hole through them. I've seen them holes shot through. They don't open like that. That's not the way they work." So she's like, "We're going to shoot the lock off." And then I'm like, well, that's weird. The guy was laying there under a blanket sleep and you shot the lock off and it didn't wake him up. Like, do you know what it sounds like to fire a weapon inside a little room that's like 5 by 5 and he didn't wake up? And then he's well manicured. And anyway, all of that to say the disgrace and the loss, I'm so that we're all happy to see, of the ruling elite mouthpiece government media. Your thoughts?
But there has to be something to replace it, because right now we in the independent media, we still do not get the audience, the readership that they get. So no, I'm not sad to get CNN, which is now a joke, to see them get taken down by this obvious hoax. I'm so glad that it was exposed, as you just described. It had the look of a $3 bill, but still the corporate media rules, and we in independent media are restricted. Some of us are, if you say the wrong things, we have people who've been arrested, had their devices taken when they cross the border, all kinds of things. So yes, I'm happy to see CNN and their ilk take a fall, but we need really independent media. And we in the independent media need to have that kind of access. That's what we really need.
I think you're right. It's going to be interesting to see. I would hope, there are some people, there are people in it was interesting in the Trump administration that you look at and you say, like for instance, an RFK Jr., you say, boy, he really burns me up with this Zionist stuff, but he challenges some corporate. So you see like these people who really burn you up because they're so bad in one area. And then you see some daylight possibly in another area, and you're just like, this isn't good enough. But one of the things I'm hoping, and that is that there can be some access allowed to the independent media that wasn't before. I don't know, but probably because of foreign policy. Let's face it, if they brought in Garland or Margaret or any of these other people from the independent media, they'd stick their hand up and they'd say, oh, what about the genocide? And, get this guy out of here.
Of course. It's not going to come from within any administration. But RFK Jr., all I can think of is that he started a measles epidemic. I have no respect for him anyway. And is him saying the Palestinians were pampered. That's a guy I have no respect for. I don't have much hope that we're going to get any real change, the kind of changes we want with anybody in the Trump administration. But before we go, I just want to remind people to buy my book.
Oh, yes.
Black America and the Presidents, as we look forward to a new administration. You can get it from the publisher, Steerforth Press, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, etc. So
and of course, your website, blackagendareport.com.
Yes.
Let me do something real quick for those who may not have seen it. I will show everybody so they can see what blackagendareport.com actually looks like. Here we go. And we will go here. And here are their stories. Syria's fall and anti-imperialist lessons. Eric Adams and Daniel Penny make Black people the face of crime. We got Syria's fall and anti-imperialist lessons. The Biden administration fails to win imprisonment for Uhuru 3. No deployment of U.S. troops or bases in the Caribbean. So we got lots of stuff going on here. Genocide versus bigger genocide in Gaza. Time to decolonize our mind. So we got a lot of interesting articles. Also, where's that Black Agenda Radio is somewhere usually on there. I don't know where.
There you go. You went past it.
Let me keep going.
Yeah, every Friday we have.
Is that it?
No, that's
keep
me.
going.
Go down. It's blue. There you go. Black Agenda
there we
Radio.
go. Black Agenda Radio. And Margaret, oftentimes she will interview people, and here they've got something from Glenn Ford, the 2019 analysis from the late Glenn Ford on U.S. support of jihadis proxies as part of a regime change effort. So we've got Black Agenda Report all the way back to 2019 and long before then, actually. But Glenn Ford was talking about that. One of the things I find about Black Agenda Report, and that is that you guys are so far ahead of the curve. You guys were like condemning Obama when like Black people were like, whatever you do, don't say anything bad about Obama. And like the Black Agenda Report guys was like, get out of here with that Obama guy. He's terrible.
Thank you so much, Garland. I do have a hard stop now.
Okay.
But, it's been fun as always, and thank you so much. And yes, every Wednesday is blackagendareport.com day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. All right, Margaret Kimberly, executive editor and a writer himself. Yes, a writer herself at Black Agenda Report. A lot of great stuff, and look forward to having you again soon. Thanks a lot, Margaret.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. That's it, Margaret Kimberly. She's a lot of fun. And as you can tell, we love to talk about the Democratic Party because she's like I do, but two people who former Democrats who despise the Democrats of today. Let's look at a couple things. Thank you very much, Dino, for this super sticker. How about we go to the Sparkster says, great to see the beautiful Margaret Kimberly. Super sticker from Shelly H. Thank you, Shelly H. We're still going. The Sparkster says, correction, beautiful and insightful Margaret Kimberly. Yeah, Margaret's really funny too. She cracks me up. U.S. is a rapacious oligarchy, period. It matters not who's in power. Ain't no war but class war. Hey, you're talking to my language there, brother. Let's see. What else have we got here? All right. Klaus says a third party now is 4 years to fix voting access in all states should be doable. Go for it. Yes, sir, Klaus. Awesome. Great comments. Let's keep going. We're looking at the comments. Unfortunately, we're not on Rumble, but so be it. Okay. Sparkster says, don't forget that Kamala sent her goons to murder Peanut the squirrel and Freddie the raccoon. That didn't help her election chances. And that also reminds me of the, what was it? The Skripal. Remember, they had like 2 guinea pigs and a cat that they left. Why do they always, these people are psychopaths and sociopaths. They're always killing animals. They literally sealed the house up and let them die. The Salisbury 3, as George Galloway refers to them. Free Peanut. Well, okay. Long live Peanut. Remember Peanut and Freddie and the Salisbury 3. Let's keep going. Sociopathic bastards are always killing poor little innocent animals. Next, we're going to look at Rockfin. And anybody new? We got people on Rockfin, and of course, we weren't. Unfortunately, we had trouble with Rumble, so I had to drop off Rumble today. I'll try to run it. I'll try to run it again soon. But thanks a lot, everybody. Don't forget. Ooh, Cobb fan. Thank you very much, Cobb fan. And don't forget, everyone. Oh, we got more. We got Bill says, starting at the beginning, and I love the starting countdown. It gives me 30 seconds to get psyched. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, thanks a lot, everybody. Share this on all your social media platforms. That is important, particularly on X, since I'm not on X. And if you can afford, whether it's Patreon or buy me a coffee or whatever the case may be, please, if you can afford to contribute to the channel. If not, hey, no problem. Just share this on all your social media platforms. And thanks for watching. Peace. I'm out.